Attention all you New Yorkers. Yippee! Taxi!
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
We have the head of Small Business Administration, Kelly Loeffler, joining us right here in the studio. Bonnie's giving her time for now for that. So, Ms. Loeffler, thank you so much for joining us. We've been talking about these results of these elections here in New York last night. Frightening results, in our collective opinion. Communists, socialists winning these congressional campaigns, and they all pretend to run like they're hoping to boost the economy, hoping to be friends to small businesses across the country. And yet, all they do is talk about. They seem only interested in Israel or bashing Israel. I mean, small business people have to be talking to you about this.
Jake, first of all, it's great to be with y'all in this room. This is incredible. I'm thrilled to be in New York. I'm saddened that they have now characterized New York as the corridor of communism. It's the capital of capitalism.
It should be.
It absolutely should be. There are 2.9 million small businesses in New York alone, employing 4 million New Yorkers. I have walked factory floors in New York. In fact, I'm heading out to Long Island to visit a small manufacturer. Imagine this group seizing the means of production, becoming, can barely run the city. Now they're going to be talking about running your small business and being responsible for your family's livelihood and income and, the benefits that these small businesses provide their hardworking families. And so, we're advocating at the SBA to celebrate free enterprise. That's what built this country. Before our founders were founding fathers, they were small business owners and founders. That is the history of this nation for 250 years. And we have to fight to make sure that it will be the next 250 years.
Here's another reality that I know that you know well, Kelly Loeffler. Job growth in America is all from small business. The big corporations, when you hear they're hiring, it means they cut somewhere else. The only real, so when people say, well, I saw this jobs report and it was only this little bit, that's how jobs get created in this country. That's where we get the net gains. What are we seeing from this? What are they telling you now is their, let's not all be all negative. What's their best positive right now and also their biggest negative?
Yeah, so small businesses across this country, 1 year after the working family tax cut has gone into effect, are really spring-loaded because they needed to know that they weren't going to be massively taxed. Remember, the Democrats voted for a $5 trillion tax increase on the American people. That would have resulted not just in small business closures, but the loss of millions of jobs. So small businesses are breathing a huge sigh of relief for the last year, which is why we have all-time record business formation in this nation month after month after month this year. And small businesses, which you're exactly right, Jay, create 2 out of every 3 new jobs, so about upwards of 80% of most jobs. We just created in the last 3 months 560,000 new jobs, blowing away estimates. The estimates were for half of that. And so small businesses are just glad that the era of massive regulation, big government, high taxes is out of the way and let them run. Mainly they say, just get out of the way and let us do what we do best. And that is exactly what President Trump is doing for this country.
One of the biggest gauges of business and economy in America, in my opinion, is pickup sales. When you see that the Ford F-150 is still the number 1 selling vehicle in America, but now getting a run for its money from the Chevy Silverado, we want all this to happen. You know that it's plumbing companies, contractors, maybe even a florist who needs a pickup to make a delivery at a wedding. That's when you know things are going well. And even with the supply problem that Ford had with the Oswego plant, aluminum plant burning and all that kind of stuff, it's still pumping them out. We were just talking before you came in. We want to see more of our education directed to blue-collar jobs and blue-collar skills. Can a small business, is there still a bias? I mean, not from you personally, Anna, but you see in the swamp, and do you see a bias against small businesses that might be blue-collar getting an SBA loan or something like that? I mean, is there anything in their way?
Not in the Trump administration.
Good.
In fact, we're getting it out of the way. In fact, we've just promulgated rules to ensure that federal contracting cannot discriminate against white-owned small businesses in the way that the Biden administration did. But even more to your point, this is about an opportunity for all small businesses of all backgrounds. If you're qualified, you can get an SBA loan, but you have to meet the standards. We're not going to waive it for certain people. And that's why the SBA last year put out record capital, $45 billion to 85,000 small businesses, but also put the guardrails back up on lending. No more Green New Deal, DEI type lending. But let me just say about your comment about Ford and Chevy trucks. There's a massive amount of small businesses in those supply chains that employ hardworking Americans that are tradesmen and women. And I am thrilled that trade school is coming back in this country. I was last week with the labor secretary. We were traveling around Michigan, meeting with trade schools, watching young kids learn everything from welding to manufacturing using robotics for semiconductors. So this nation is going to be a nation of builders again, thanks to President Trump.
I think a couple of years ago, and this was before President Trump came back into office, showing that again, it's the business people, small and large, that do things. It was a Coca-Cola bottler that donated a big 18-wheeler Coca-Cola truck to a trucking school in in the South. So it's not, businesses aren't just creating jobs; they're also giving back in their own way.
Absolutely. Look, think about, who sponsors the local softball team, the Little League, who sponsors the parades and everything that happens on Main Street across this country. Who says, I see a police officer walking in, I'm going to buy his lunch. That's the small business owner. They honor our hardest working Americans. They honor our veterans. They give back. They create jobs. And look, they're the biggest provider of job training. Think about your first job, probably at a small business. They taught you to show up on time, punch the time clock. That's what small businesses do. And now formally, the Trump administration is supporting 1 million apprenticeships. A lot of those are going to happen at small businesses to have those work-based learning opportunities for young people.
Kelly, this is Fernando Mateo. Welcome to the studios, and we're honored to have you here. We know you work very hard to help small businesses here in New York and probably around the country. But New York has lost about 16,000 small businesses in the last year or so. We see many of these businesses continue to shut down. And we don't see a government here in New York that's really helping us in any way, shape, or form. You have bodega owners where crime is extremely high, working the poorest areas of New York City. If you walk up and down the main avenues, you see all these shut down stores available. What can the SBA do to help get these businesses reopened with landlords that are asking crazy rent because their mortgages are very high? Is there anything that the SBA can do to assist, to help open these businesses again?
Well, Fernando, it's great to be with you, and I'm so glad you asked the question that way because absolutely, there are things that the SBA does every single day. Can we overcome some of the blue state, blue city problems? Maybe not in all cases, but we can make sure that we have access to capital. Those SBA guaranteed small business loans that, by the way, operate at zero subsidy. They are not subsidized by taxpayer, but they're subsidized by a guarantee fee that is paid to the government, so that one small business isn't subsidizing another. We also have small business development centers that help small businesses navigate the complexities of some of these regulatory or tax or insurance or costs that they might be seeking advice for. And then finally, we have our Veterans Business Opportunity Centers that we support veterans. So we try to make sure that we have something that serves every part of the market. Even if you never use a loan product, we have that counseling available.
Another topic you're an expert on, Kelly Loeffler, Small Business Administration Chief, is farming. Central Illinois, born and raised, and worked on a soybean farm. One of the places I was a producer was in Decatur, Illinois.
Don't tell me you were there too.
I was there in Decatur. That was WAND in Decatur, Illinois. I was a producer there as well, so I know that region very, very well. So let's talk about another small business in America that's under the gun, farming, and they're definitely, there's been some serious ups and downs there. How does the SBA have, is this just something that the Ag Department oversees? Does the SBA have any interaction with some of these farming businesses?
We absolutely do. And I'm so glad you're bringing up America's original small business. I mean, most of America used to be agrarian. 85% had their jobs in farming or in farm communities. And look, I grew up on a 5-generation family farm. My nephew's 27. He's still farming, but you rarely meet a 27-year-old farmer. And look, they've been hit in every way. You've got regulation that came out of the Green New Deal that was very tough. That's a big area in which the SBA can advocate, is to fight for farming and ensure that they're not squished by the big bureaucratic state that threatens to put them out of business through crazy environmental regulations that don't have any environmental benefit, but have enormous costs shouldered by our smallest businesses. And by the way, food security is national security. 3 years ago, America, shockingly, became a net importer of food. It's the first time in our history that we relied on external food. So we've got to get those high burdensome costs, those diesel exhaust fluid rules out of the way. I've worked closely with EPA Administrator Zeldin and Secretary Rollins at USDA to do that, to fight for to repair for farmers and truckers that shouldn't have to pay high maintenance costs on their equipment. So we're always advocating. And then, of course, we have put $7 billion in lending out into rural communities because that, again, relates back to our infrastructure.